All right, welcome back, class, to week four. So last lesson we covered the internet, browsers. If we're going to cover the internet, we definitely need to cover privacy and security. These are huge concerns when you're connected to this massive global network. That also means, right, that you're potentially in the same network, right, with attackers, with hackers, with dangerous characters who might want to cause you harm. Um, through various and many different means. So if we're going to talk about the internet, we do have to talk about security. So cybersecurity, first of all, what is cybersecurity referred to? So it refers to the practice of protecting systems, networks, and data from digital attacks, unauthorized access, and damage. So in the discussion about AI and operating systems, a lot of you mentioned that, oh, if AI takes control over our operating system, then we're opening ourselves up to digital attacks. You're absolutely right. Operating systems have very well defined security systems. Those systems aren't perfect, right? If they were perfect, then we wouldn't really even have a field in cybersecurity because we would have already solved the problem. Unfortunately, it's kind of a never ending cycle of creating protections, creating operating systems that can secure our data, but then hackers find, vulnerabilities, loopholes, um, and essentially those systems need to continue to improve as hackers continue to find vulnerabilities. So as they find vulnerabilities, you have to improve it. You make changes, new vulnerabilities are made. So yeah, that's essentially the field of cybersecurity, trying to secure data in a reality that feels like impossible to secure it, right? But we do our best. So key aspects of the field include data protection, so ensuring that sensitive information is not easily accessible. Network security, so network security means we're, connected to a network like the internet. So it's protecting networks from intrusions and attacks. So maybe that could be your local cafe, right? You're connected to a public Wi-Fi network. How do we protect you from other users of that network? Application security, so securing software from vulnerabilities. So your software handles sensitive data, right? It could be pictures, right, of you and your family. If it's a banking app, right, it could be your financial data. So we gotta have to make sure that those applications have appropriate security measures to protect your data. And then there's operational security, so managing and protecting the way networks and data are handled. So that's just what do we do um, in the processes of our day to day of using the apps, especially in a business kind of setting. What are you doing as a business, right, to make sure that your data isn't leaked or exposed? And then incident response. So if there is a breach and when there is a breach, right, because it's only a matter of time until there is one, it's preparing for it and also to it appropriately to minimize the damage. So that's kind of the field of cybersecurity. Why does it matter? Because data nowadays, right? We've already discussed it in some of our other labs. Technology, data, it touches all aspects of our lives. One of the most sensitive areas is financial, right? So we do a lot of our banking. That was actually one of the first personal computing kind of efforts was in banking because one of the best applications of computers was automatic transactions, right? Why can't we just pull out money right at an ATM rather than going to our bank teller? And that's kind of one of the early computers that we saw commercially available to the public. But that brings its own slew of financial risks. So we're exposed to financial data breaches. So the organizations that handle our data do suffer breaches. There are scams on the internet. And there's even predatory profit models if we start looking at video games, right, and young children. We won't be discussing that as much, but definitely something to consider, right? When you're on the internet, when you're dealing with technology, you're exposing yourself to so many financial risks. There's also information risk. So maybe it's not your credit card number, maybe it's not your bank information, maybe it's your social security. So perfect personal information leaks, identity theft. So if they get enough information on you, they can pretend to be you, whether in making a purchase or getting a loan. Um, so yeah, anytime you're online, you're exposing yourself to these threats. So the one of the things you can do to protect yourself is, of course, increase your knowledge, right, of these threats, and then your awareness, and of course, also being a responsible digital citizen. That means when you're on the internet, being, the kind of person you want everybody else to be. And of course, if you're going to educate yourself, educate your community, your parents, your family, your siblings, because the more that they know, the more they're also going to be protected from these threats. And then there's also careers in the field, right? So if you do, we'll be talking about careers more and more later in the class. But yeah, if you want to do more right in this field to protect people, because this is about protecting not just companies' data, but the public's data, right? Cybersecurity is definitely a career for you if you're interested in the field. All right, so IC3 is an organization. It's called the Internet Crime Complaint Center. So it's somewhere that the government actually handles internet crime reports. So people report anything that happened to them to this organization, and they keep track of statistics and do their best to use this right to better protect the public. So over the last 5 years, so from 2019 to 2023, you can see the obvious increase, right? Not only in the number of complaints, but in the financial losses because of these scams. So 2019, we have about 500,000 complaints. We're nearly doubled in 2023 at around 900,000 complaints. And then if we look at the financial loss, it's even bigger figures, right? So we started at 3.5 billion in 2019, and that's almost tripled in 2023 at 12.5 billion dollars in losses because of internet crimes. So who are the victims of these crimes, right? So if you notice, there is a trend, right, in who's most vulnerable to these crimes. You could probably already guess it's the older population, right? Those who are less experienced with the internet, with digital media, with everything technology, right? So the less you know, the more exposed you are. So the under 20s, smallest number of complaints, smallest number of financial losses. And if you move on to the 60 plus population, it's 100,000 complaints, the biggest number of complaints, and it's 3.4 billion in financial losses. So for the older students in this class, right, this information is crucial for you to protect yourself when you are on the internet, when you're connected to these networks. So some crime statistics. So what type of crimes are people actually perpetrating, right? How are people getting a hold of personal information, financial information? You might be surprised. It's not like your traditional hacking where there's some like technical expert breaking into um, your computer, right, and taking control of it. It's actually a lot more simple and a lot less technical than you might think. So some of the most common crimes are tech support crimes. So people who pretend to be, Microsoft support or maybe support for your bank and say, "Hey, I'm here to help you. Give me your information." Essentially, they're pretending to be somebody that they're not. So that's kind of a popular, but not the biggest one. We also have extortion. So people telling you, "Hey, I have sensitive information about you." Could be a sensitive picture, right? Could be uh, information they found, through social media and so forth. They'll say, "Hey, I'm going to expose you if you don't give me money." So that's one form of it. There's also personal data breach. So you might hear on the news, "Oh, so and so company, right, suffered a data breach. All your passwords are exposed." Actually, not too long ago on the news, there's supposedly, allegedly, right, a report that all of our social security numbers were exposed due to some hacking. So definitely, those involve more technical type of hacking. We'll talk about the different types of hacks in some of the following slides. But for the most part, the most common type of scam on the internet is phishing. It's a pretty low tech, you could even call it social engineering, which we'll talk about in one of the other slides. It's just a way that hackers or perpetrators or attackers on the internet, they pretend to be something they're not, It doesn't involve you having, intimate knowledge of a network system or an operating system. It just you creating like a website, an email that appears to be something that is not. We'll definitely talk about what phishing is, and I'll even give you all a little example on what that might look like. So first of all, let's talk about computer attacks, all the different types. So computer sabotage or a computer attack refers to the intentional actions designed to damage, disrupt, or gain unauthorized access to computer systems, networks, or data. So of course, this involves some of the movie type hacking that you've heard of. Those are definitely tied a lot to those big business data breaches. You might be surprised though, there's other ways to get a hold of that data. But the most common type would be phishing. That's the most popular method of getting people's data. There's Wi-Fi piggybacking, which we'll talk about, malware and viruses. Malware is like this broad category of software that is used to infect computers and kind of steal data. And like I said, there's hacking. And then there's these special attacks, denial of service or distributed denial of service. That's essentially when you flood um, a website with like requests. Um, you could use like bots or something like that. So these faulty requests, so they're not like legitimate requests, and the website can't handle it, and you crash the website. We're not going to be talking about that one. We'll mostly be talking about phishing in the first four here. But just a little shout out to DOS, one of the type of attacks that could take down an entire website. So the most common cybersecurity threat to the average consumer is phishing. Why is it called phishing? So it's not phishing with an F, it's phishing with a PH, but it is in a sense kind of like phishing. You're trying to hook in somebody who, unbeknownst to them, right? They think they're, answering an email. They think they're, logging into their favorite website, when in fact they're logging into a phishing attack. So phishing is a type of cyber attack where attackers attempt to deceive individuals into revealing sensitive information, such as passwords, credit card numbers, or personal details. So how do they do this? Well, they pretend to be a legitimate entity. So that could be they could pretend to be like a website, somebody even like a work organization, right? I've gotten phishing emails straight to my work email where they pretend to be, somebody that works at the company, or any other type of message, right, where they're just pretending to be something they're not. And essentially, they're trying to trick you into submitting sensitive information. So, what does a phish look like? So, one of the most common ways you can get a phish attack is through an email. It's an email that's pretending to be something that it's not. You click, you interact with the email, maybe you log in, maybe you punch in a password, maybe you enter some credit card information. Boom, it's not the actual website you think that you're navigating to. So if you look at these two examples, two emails, one of them is a phishing attack, one of them is legitimate. Uh, One of the ways you can determine if a website or an email is legitimate is by looking at the address, right? The email address or the URL address, right? Where this is coming from. So here I kind of zoomed in because it's hard to see. Here's a Chick-fil-A promotional email. It comes from support@update-win.com. And then we have this password reset email. It's from account security no reply at accountprotection.microsoft.com. Which one is the phishing email? So I'll give you all a chance to look at the two emails. Which one do you think is more likely to be a phishing email? Yeah, so consider the address, consider maybe the information they're requesting. Who knows? It's not as simple as you might think. All right, so if you made your guess, if you chose the Microsoft password reset email as the phishing attack, you would be incorrect. To your surprise, it's actually the Chick-fil-A email, the innocent Chick-fil-A email. The email on the right is actually a legitimate email. This is a real password reset email I received to one of my Gmail accounts. I did use my Gmail for Microsoft, in case you're wondering. So yeah, I actually did request to get my password reset. and this is a legitimate email. How can I tell if it's legitimate? Well, did I first of all request a password reset, right? If I'm getting a password reset email and I didn't actually reset the password, that's already an immediate red flag. Another thing you can look at is the actual email does end in Microsoft.com. So that's definitely a green flag, but not the only one I'm going to use. If I do eventually do reset my password right, I'm going to make sure I'm on the right web address. It says Microsoft.com and not some other crazy URL. The Chick-fil-A one, it says updatewin.com. That has nothing to do with Chick-fil-A. It screams red flag. Even though it's very innocent email, right? When I click on that button, I don't know if that's gonna, open up to like a form where it's asking my credit card information. I don't know what's gonna happen, right? So the best thing you can do with an email that you're not sure of is don't click on it, don't open it, right? Um, if you didn't request that email, right, if you don't need to punch in your information to that email, it's better to err on the side of caution. Of course, if it's a work email, right, you can always reach out to somebody, right, to verify, hey, is this a legitimate email? Fun fact, at my work, they actually send us phishing emails from our work to test us, to make sure to keep us on our toes and say, hey, are you, releasing information to, any email? Are you actually checking, right, who sent the email? So they do send these these test automated phishing emails to make sure that we're protecting the sensitive information, because I do work with government sensitive information, and I do need like a clearance to handle it. All right, so phishing is definitely the most common one. Another one to consider is Wi-Fi piggybacking. So that occurs when someone connects to a wireless internet network, so a local network like your Wi-Fi, without the owner's permission or knowledge. So at your home, right, it's password protected. That doesn't mean it's, impenetrable. Someone can definitely piggyback onto your Wi-Fi network, um, especially if it's not secured well. Maybe you have a weak password. We'll talk about passwords in some of the next slides. So if they do gain access through it, through various means, then they have potentially access, right, to all the devices connected to that network. Definitely a more technical type of attack. Now, if you're on a public Wi-Fi network, there's typically less protection, right? It's not a secured network. It's open for any user. So you're going to see these networks, right, at your Starbucks, at airports, libraries, hotels, parks. Always be wary which network you're connecting to, right? You could be at an airport and you'll see 10 different Wi-Fis. Maybe one of those is an attacker's Wi-Fi waiting for you to connect, right? And send you some malware or some dangerous software. We'll talk about that in the next slides. But yeah, always be worried about what you're connecting to. Usually your computer will ask you, is this a public or a private network? They're asking you that because if it's a private network, they're making it more easily for you to connect to other devices. If it's a public network, they're going to set your settings to be more, uh, you know, tighter protections so that people that are also on that network can't just easily access the data on your device or try to connect to your device. So yeah, if you're using public Wi-Fi, always be aware which Wi-Fi you're connecting to, and then of course make sure that you're not, doing it for extremely sensitive activities. Yeah, try to avoid that as much as you can. Sometimes we can't, right? And that's kind of the thing about cybersecurity. We're always balancing convenience with privacy and security. Sometimes we just want to do things right really quickly. We need to do things on the fly in public. We got to connect to the Wi-Fi, right? We need the internet. But just remember, you're potentially exposing yourself. And I can tell you, I've had my credit card information stolen. I've had passwords stolen. Sometimes the best thing you can do is once you know about it, right, respond to it. So if you see that your credit card is being used, without your permission, cancel the credit card as quickly as possible, right, immediately. Same with passwords, right? If you see that a password or like an unknown login was detected, make sure you change that password and make sure you choose a strong password, as we'll talk about in some of the next slides. All right, so hackers, right? Malware, we've thrown some of those keywords. So what is malware? So it's a broad term that refers to any malicious software designed to harm, exploit, or otherwise compromise the functionality of a computer system, network, or device. So it can take on many forms. The virus, right, that most of us have heard about, especially if you've seen, movies about hackers or with a hacker in it. So a virus essentially attaches to a program and then it spreads itself to other files via that program. There's a worm, which is very similar to a virus. The only difference, it doesn't need to attach to a particular program. It can just replicate itself across networks, across your system, just on its own. There's ransomware, where they'll essentially get your data, they'll encrypt it, so they'll secure it on their side, and they'll say, "Hey, you want your data back? You're gonna have to pay me." So that's ransomware. Another malicious type of attack involving software. Spyware, so that's software that secretly collects information about a user's activities. So let's say you do open a phishing email, right? Let's say you install a program that was not from the website you thought you were installing it from. Or maybe you did install a program and you didn't double check, right, if it was actually a legitimate program. You could be installing something like spyware where they'll record your keystrokes. They'll record whatever you're typing on your keyboard and they'll wait, right? And they'll see, hey, this looks like a password. Boom, I just cracked this person's entire security because they use the same password everywhere. And again, we'll talk about that in the password slide. There's adware. This one's really, really common. It's just software that automatically displays or downloads ads when on the web. So this one isn't as dangerous, but definitely it can slow down your computer. It's very annoying, right? So adware is technically a type of malware. One more malicious type of malware is Trojans. So they're disguised as legitimate software, just like I mentioned with spyware. But once you install them, they infect your system. So Trojan, referring to that Greek story, right, where the Trojans they hid inside a horse, they gave it to the Greeks, and boom, they jumped out of the horse and attacked the Greeks. So that's what Trojans do essentially. They pretend to be something nice, something useful, an application software that you were looking to use, but in reality, it's actually just another type of malware. All right, so hacking, the stuff you see in movies, right? As we already discussed, that very technical hacking, it's not as common as you might think. It definitely happens, right? Especially when you hear about those big company data breaches. But for the most part, phishing is way more common, and that one's way less technical. It just involves even just sending an email, right, and making it look like a legitimate email. But hacking refers to the practice of exploiting weaknesses in a computer systems. So the operating system, right, that works to secure your computer. Well, hackers try to find little holes in the system, right, holes in the security. So they find weaknesses in the systems, networks, or software. So it could also be a software you downloaded, right? Especially if it's like banking software, right? Um, they typically do have a lot of protections, right? But a hacker can always find a vulnerability. So they find these weaknesses to gain unauthorized access to data or control over systems. So there's lots of different types of hacking. It encompasses a wide range of activities. There's definitely the more technical ones like breaking into networks or systems. But like I said, the less technical approaches like phishing. Phishing is technically a hacking attack. They're more frequent. They're in fact the most common type of entry point for many attacks. So don't think that there's all these super technical hackers just waiting to steal your information. They're definitely out there, but the more common ones, right, are people with less technical skills, a lot of time on their hands, and they're just sending out, right, these phishing emails, trying to trick somebody. So yeah, they're throwing the hook, right? Phishing. All right, information leaks. So these are the ones where sometimes it has nothing to do with us, right? We did everything right, but we trusted a company with our sensitive information. Could be our bank, could be our university. I went to UCLA and they already had a data breach. They ended up giving us like a year of free like credit monitoring software as like a sorry for it. Um, there's not much I could do right in that situation, unfortunately. But this serves to educate you, right? That every time you do trust a service, right, you are potentially exposing yourself to a data breach. Do you use these services? Do you just go, full, internet agnostic, where you just don't go on the internet at all, right? It's kind of a trade-off. We love the internet. We love what it gives us, right? The convenience, the power, the information, the accessibility. But you always have to keep in mind, right? Even if it's not keeping you from jumping on the internet, right? At least have it in your head that, these things can happen, and when they do, we have to do something about it. So information or data breaches occur when unauthorized individuals gain access to sensitive, protected, or confidential data. So there's all these storage hardware, server computers, right, that these companies use when you're, getting your bank information, when you want to see your balance. Well, hackers do, in some cases, get access to these computers, to this data, and they're going to misuse that data, right? They're going to steal it, potentially even steal, right, your hard-earned money, depending on what kind of information they get their hands on. So they typically involve access to data without permission. So it could be through hacking, but it could also be through social engineering or exploiting vulnerabilities. Social engineering is a manipulation technique that exploits human psychology to gain confidential information, access, or perform actions that compromise security. I will be posting a video linking it on week 4, showing you just how easy it is to do social engineering. So, social engineering is when you're not using technical skills to gain access to data, but you're using your social skills. You're almost doing like social hacking. You could pick up the phone and call a company and say, "Hey, I'm the head of HR. I'm the head of IT. I'm so and so, right? I need you to give me access to this sort of information." And because people, unbeknownst to them, right, you sound confident in what you're saying. Sometimes these, lower level employees, they make mistakes and they end up causing massive data breaches. So it's easier than you think, and it's a lot less technical than you think. So it's not like in the movies. I know a lot of your responses mentioned about AI and OS. Oh, hackers, hackers, hackers. The truth is, the more common type of hacking is really through less technical methods. So that also means, right, if you're knowledgeable and you keep in mind, right, what not to do on the internet, you can usually protect yourself from these less technical attacks. So some data on information leaks. So the number of data breaches by industry. So in financial services, banking, and insurance, over a 10-year span, 2003 to 2023, we saw a slight increase. So 1,000 attacks to almost 1,500 attacks. Manufacturing, technology, and communications. That one had a big spike. Healthcare, massive spike. Um, Makes you wonder, right, what they're doing with that information, potentially doing some extortion or even ransomware. So the total compromises per year, so regardless of industry, we could see here, it's increasing, right, year by year. So 2021, only 1,800, and then up in 2023, nearly double at 3,200. So yeah, it's a part of life at this point, unfortunately, right? Again, cybersecurity is a growing field because of that. We'll definitely talk about, the hard numbers of what do you get paid, right, for being a cybersecurity specialist? What does the job entail? Um, but it is a growing field because of these numbers. Um, because there are so many attacks on our data, there's a huge demand, right, for experts, for more experts to protect our data across all different kinds of industries. Let's talk privacy. So some things you can do, right, to just be less exposed on the internet, especially when we're talking about all these less technical attacks, right? It's not the super intelligent hackers that can crack any code, right, that are going in to find your banking information. It's sometimes you making silly mistakes on the internet that cause uh, your identity to be stolen, access to your apps and data to be stolen. So there's steps you can do to just be more private on the internet. And again, if you're just more cautious, if you're on the side of caution, it's better, right, than just being, all exposed and just not caring what you post or what you do on the internet. There's two sides to it. It's better to be safer than sorry. All right, so privacy. So privacy in relation to the internet technology refers to the right and expectation of individuals to control their personal information and data, including how it is collected, used, shared, and stored by online platforms, services, and devices. If you remember when I was logging in to DoorDash, I didn't actually give them my full name. If an app asks you for your birthday, you don't have to give them your actual birthday. Don't feel inclined to always share your personal information. Like I said, if it's for a work, software, a work application, a work email, of course, right? Or like a school email, right? Of course, you're gonna want to actually be factual in the information you're sharing. But if it's with, a retailer, something that's not really critical to your personal life, then don't share personal details with them, right? Because the more you share with them, the more exposed you are to those data breaches, the more exposed you are to them selling your information. There's already been cases like Facebook where they were just giving away your information to like this political organization, and they were totally misusing your data. So again, the less you share, the better off you are. All right, so many apps rely on advertising for revenue by collecting data on user behavior and preferences. Apps can serve targeted ads, which are often more effective than generic ones. So yeah, a lot of these apps that we use online seem to be free, but there is always a cost. Nothing is free. You're actually paying for the services through your data. They keep track of how you use this application, where you navigate to, and they share this information with retailers, with people selling things, right? So they can better, give you that advertisement. So if you've ever been, searching for something, you're searching for, I don't know, um, best lip gloss or something like that, or best television, or, you know, delicious, healthy restaurant near me. And then suddenly you start getting ads for exactly the thing you search for. That's no accident. That application, Google, whether it be Google, whether it be a web app that you're using, whether it be a social media, they're keeping track of what you're searching for across different apps, so that they can give you these very, very precise advertisements. And that means a higher chance of you, right, clicking on them and hitting purchase, hitting buy, or subscribing, right, to a service. Um, so again, nothing is free on the internet. We do pay with our data, but again, that's at a cost of our privacy. So you always have to be careful, right? Balance the two. So apps often also collect data to tailor content and services to individual users and improve their experience. So sometimes they're not just selling your data to other people. Sometimes they do just want to improve your experience. But in doing so, right, they're going to be collecting sensitive information like where you were. Like if you have your smartphone, right, some apps will keep track of, your location. They'll keep track of how long you were on the app and so forth. And in the hands of, an attacker, that could be potentially misused and put you in great danger. So privacy and password security. So the first line of defense when it comes to security and privacy are passwords. Whenever you make a password, whenever you make an account and you type in a password, you're encrypting your information, so users can't see that password. Um, but if you don't kind of, make your password difficult enough, then it's going to be easy for them to guess it. Or if you don't kind of have a variety of passwords, once they do crack your password right, then they'll have access to all your applications. So what can you do to be more secure? Well, password security refers to the measures and practices designed to protect passwords and the accounts they secure. So passwords serve as the first line of defense for securing accounts and systems. The stronger the password, the better the defense. So some tips: password should be long, 12 to 16 characters at least. You should mix uppercase, lowercase characters, numbers, and special characters. So the more variety, the more complexity, the better. A very modern and common form of extra security today is 2FA, or two-factor authentication. So nowadays, if you log into your Google on a new laptop, you're typically going to have to go to your smartphone and approve that login, or you'll have to sign into your email on another device and approve that login. Why do we have to do this? Why do we have to do that annoying process, right, of codes and all that stuff? It's in the name of security, really. By adding this extra layer where you have to verify from another device that's already been verified, right, that you've already logged into, then you're adding that extra layer of security, making sure that someone who did get access to your password now has to also, right, sign in on another device and approve it, which is unlikely, right, for them to be authenticated on two separate devices that you own. So by adding that second device, that second layer of authentication, you're going to better protect yourself. So if an app ever asks you for two-factor authentication, do you want to enable it? Say yes, right? Because it's going to add that extra layer, as annoying as it might be, having to do those codes and that extra login. One that is typical in young digital users is oversharing. So what does oversharing mean? It refers to the act of disclosing excessive personal information, often on social media or in other public forums that may not be appropriate or necessary for the context. So this could be sharing just details about your life, your thoughts, your feelings, or experiences that are too intimate or sensitive, potentially leading to privacy risks, misunderstandings, or negative consequences. Failing to recognize the boundaries between public and private life lead to the sharing of information that might be better kept confidential. So yeah, sometimes we just want to share stuff with our friends, right? With our family. But remember, if you're on social media, if you're on this public forum, right, on these websites, sometimes that thing that you're sharing, right, is not just going to go towards them, especially if you don't have enough knowledge, right, about how to protect your profile, right? Maybe you have it public and you didn't even realize. Maybe you didn't realize that even though your profile's private, that when people look up your username, right, they can still see your profile information, right, your basic information. So be careful what you're putting on there, and make sure you understand, right, what kind of settings are available on a particular application. But there's even more to it, right, than just is your profile hidden or public. Let's look at this example. So this is like a typical social media post. So here it says Emily Ann Evans 1 day ago. She shared, a little life update off to our dream honeymoon destination, Hawaii, with my new hubby Jim. My heart is torn leaving behind our fur baby Scruffy, but a big shout out to my mom Julie Smith for watching him. I'll miss those puppy snuggles and wagging tail, but we'll reunite soon. Stay tuned for vacation pics, honeymoon puppy love, forever Evans, 6/27/23. Okay, all in one post, they've revealed where they're going to be, the first and last name of some of their loved ones, their pet's name, an important date. Why do those matter? Because these are probably things you're probably using on your password. If you've ever seen profile security questions, they're often like, "Hey, what's your pet's name? What's your mom's maiden name?" So every time you're oversharing information, right? She didn't have to say Julie Smith, right? She could have just said my mom, and that would have been enough. She didn't have to say her dog's name. She didn't have to say they were going to Hawaii. Um, they all of this information, this post would have worked just fine, right? Hey, we're going on our honeymoon. Stay tuned for pics. There, short and sweet. But by adding all this extra information that wasn't necessary, they've now exposed themselves to a password attack, right? Where someone just guesses your password. They've exposed themselves actually to like a physical attack, right? Someone could show up to wherever they're headed. Now that someone knows that they're not going to be home, right? Now somebody can go over to their house, right, and potentially burglarize them. So just by sharing this on social media, and even if it's just to friends and family, you never know who's going to see this information, right? At the end of the day, it is online. And for those of you who are sharing extra information, right, like about your personal life, check this out. It says intimate or sensitive. There's sometimes information that you don't need to be sharing online. If you're having a feud with a partner, right, with your loved one, with your significant other, maybe don't make that, a public feud, right? Not only are you, oversharing your information, again, you're potentially exposing yourself to dangerous people, to dangerous attacks, not just digitally, right, but also in person, right, in the real world, as we'll be seeing in some of the other slides. So talking about, right, oversharing, there's cyberbullying. So cyberbullying is a form of bullying that takes place through digital devices such as computers, smartphones, and tablets. Cyberbullying didn't exist before the internet. It literally has the word cyber in it, right? Um, Now, why is cyberbullying so problematic? Well, a lot of perpetrators that are cyberbullying, right, that are harassing people online, they'll hide behind anonymous accounts. Often involves repeated incidents, so they'll continue to harass you, right, because it's easy, right, to do it on the internet. Just need to type it in, hit click, and boom, the damage is done. So cyberbullying, it goes hand in hand with oversharing. Why? Because the more that you share about yourself online, the more that you attach your identity right to these digital services, these digital applications, the more exposed you are, right, for people to use not only that information to gain access to your data, but to gain insight to your life, right? To find out, hey, what is this person like? What is this person not like? What can I do or say, right, to hurt them? So the more we attach ourselves to computers and to technology, the more we are exposed, right, to all these risks, including real world risks. So I invite you, especially all the young people in my class, right? Don't tie yourself, your identity, your life so much to computers, right? There's so much more to life. There's so much more um, to how you could be using these computers, right? And the fact is that there's already so many risks with using internet, using technology, that why would you add an extra one, right? By kind of just tying your entire uh, life, your identity to these like social media websites and so forth. Because there's bad people there, right? Just like in the real world, there's bad people. You don't go out there, right, and make friends with everybody. Well, the same is true for the internet, right? You can't just trust everybody or everything on the internet, not just information, but also the people on there. So prevention is possible through awareness, right? So just like we're talking about the dangers, how common it can be, um, this is how we start this conversation. This is how we make things easier, better for someone who's been a victim of cyberbullying. So just by being more aware of it, we're more equipped to prevent these kinds of incidents. Reporting, right? So if you are a victim of cyberbullying, right, uh, providing clear channels for you to report it is essential. Back in the day, right, if you were when it was first happening, right, and you'd go to the police, they wouldn't really know what to do. But nowadays, if it is a serious, right, form of harassment, they'll definitely take it seriously. They're still definitely limited, right? A lot of our systems kind of lag behind, right, when it comes to technology, including our policing systems. But right, there's multiple channels, right? You can go to the police if you're a student, right? Go to your school officials, or the most important is support, right? Support systems. So we all have family, we all have friends that we can go to for help, for advice, for support, just for a shoulder to lean on, right? Because at the end of the day, even if you're doing your best to just be on the internet and not overshare, overexpose yourself. Uh, Ultimately, as soon as you connect, right, you're still at risk of something like this. So make sure, right, to lean on people people you care about, people in the real world, right, that can support you when these situations get out of hand. And then just giving victims the opportunity to share, right, what has happened to them is essential to kind of mitigating this form of attack. So it's very unfortunate, right, that the internet, is kind of this wild west. But it's a reflection of the real world, right? It's a reflection of us as a society, as people. So as much as there are good people out there, right? Remember the internet is full of all kinds of people. So you always have to be careful about what you share and what you do. So reducing your risk. So make sure that you secure your data right. So your financial data, make sure you use strong and unique passwords like we discussed. Add two-factor authentication. Use caution when you're connected to public Wi-Fi, and then use secure payment methods. Make sure you're on a secured website, so a website you can trust. Make sure that you use something like credit cards, digital wallets. So digital wallets, like if you use Google Pay or Apple Pay, those are actually safer than physical cards nowadays. There's a lot to it that we're not going to discuss on why, but just know that there are ways for you to, make your payments a little bit more securely. Uh, and a little tidbit to note, credit cards. If you are ever, victim of a financial attack and you have a credit card, for the most part, credit cards will reimburse you, right, for whatever you lost. It's different for debit cards. There's often limits for how much they'll reimburse you. Um, all right, so let's see. So be wary of attackers and scammers. So not only can you add these extra layers of protection, but you can also just, be more knowledgeable, be more careful. So avoid sharing personal information. Do not overshare. Educate yourself on phishing scams. I'll definitely make sure to add a video, right? Just more on phishing and what it looks like. But like I showed you in the example, for the most part, it's just emails, right, that appear to be something that they're not. So just by educating yourself, being knowledgeable, you can, spot things out more easily and be a little bit less susceptible to these attacks. Stay current on new scam techniques, right? There's the tech support scams, investment scams. You see a lot of those online. Hey, get rich quick. If it's too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true. Do not trust everything on the internet. Everything you read, especially if it's not from a, reputable source. We talked about bias in the last class. You can't believe it, without first, having some skepticism. So make sure when you're on the internet, don't trust things. Be on the weary side. Be on the side of skepticism. Be on the safe side. And then, of course, only share your personal data with trusted sites and merchants. So you see a good deal, right? You see an awesome price for a pair of shoes. That's already one red flag, right? That price is way too low. When you go to buy the shoes, right, make sure that that website is secure, right? Something I'll often do is Google the website. I'll literally say, "Hey, is this website legitimate? Is this a scam?" And you'll see, responses from other users, and they'll say yes or no. It's not a perfect system, right? But at least I'm doing that extra step of making sure that I'm not sharing my information with, potential attackers. All right, and then surf responsibly, be a responsible digital citizen. So be the kind of user you want the rest of the internet to be. Be kind and respectful. So if you play your role right, you're putting your little grain of sand right into making the internet a better place. Of course, secure your information. Do not overshare. Maintain digital literacy, and even more important, that educate those around you, especially our young students in the class. It's your job that as you learn about these things, that you share it with your friends and family. And as we saw, the older populations, right? Because they're most at risk to these kinds of attacks, particularly like phishing attacks, cyberbullying, of course, more common in our younger generations. And then use technology ethically. Again, be the user that you want other users to be, and then report any harmful behaviors, right? A lot of applications these days have channels for you to report, harmful content, abusive language, and so forth. All right, so that's it for today's class. So make sure to surf responsibly when you're researching for our lab this week. And, just in your day-to-day life, whether you're on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, maybe think about, right, what you're sharing, what you're doing there. And for the most part, you're better off, sharing less. I know it's hard to do when technology is so intertwined into our lives, but it's just not worth, right, all the dangers we're exposing ourselves to. There's a life outside the internet. So as much as I'm a computers guy, uh, you're better off going outside, right, making real friendships, talking to real people. Um, that's just for me, right? That's just my perspective. Do with it what you like. But yeah, that's what I that's what I hope you guys take away from this class. All right, I'll see y'all next week.